Another death now linked to that deadly Boar's Head listeria outbreak. Some right here in Connecticut say the popular lunch meat producer needs to be held accountable. Channel 3's Matt McFarland joins us now live at the state capitol with more on what's going on. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Roger. Unfortunately, that number is now up to 10, and it's why Senator Richard Blumenthal and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, they are urging the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Justice to work together to determine whether or not criminal charges are warranted. Now, you might remember back in July, it was when Boar's Head recalled nearly 7 million products of deli meats, causing deli counters across the U.S. to close temporarily in order to remove the lunch meat and clean up. The issue, a listeria outbreak at a Virginia plant where liverwurst was produced. Now, 10 deaths are connected to that outbreak, along with nearly 60 hospitalizations. Boar's Head eventually shut down that Virginia plant, but according to CBS News and other media outlets, just in the last 2 years, health inspectors have cited major safety concerns at the facility, including moisture, condensation, and blood visible on the floors and walls. Now, the senator will be here later this morning, and he notes that just in the last year, since August of 2023, he says inspectors have cited more than 84 issues of noncompliance at that now closed Virginia plant. We're live with the mobile newsroom outside the state capitol. Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.